Hello, my name is Richard Felix, and over the last year I've been conducting the National Ghost Tour of Great Britain, visiting some of the most haunted sites in this country. An awful lot of those sites, of course, have been castles. They are as haunted as anywhere else in this country. And of course one of the reasons is they were built as forts, defensive positions to keep people out. So of course the amount of death, pain, anguish and torture that went on within these very walls is, I believe, one of the reasons that these places are so haunted. No more so than here at Tutbury Castle in Staffordshire. Because another reason why I think these places are so haunted is because of the charismatic, famous people that visited them. And this place especially has got so many famous people to do with it, including the De Ferrers family, Earls of Derby, John of Gaunt, Henry VI, Margaret of Anjou, Charles I, James I, and of course Mary Queen of Scots. Another reason I believe they're so haunted is because of the amount of stone, because obviously all castles, or most castles, are made of stone. I believe that stone especially holds certain properties that allow recordings to be made, just like videotape. And I believe years later, for some strange reason, possibly on the anniversary of that death, or if the atmosphere is similar, then a replay is shown. That event is seen again by certain gifted people. So what we're going to do on this video is to take you and show you some of the most haunted castles in Great Britain. So settle back, dim those lights, give us your full attention, and let me take you on a tour of some of the most haunted castles in Great Britain. This is Castle Rising in Norfolk. This is one of the largest castle keeps preserved in Great Britain. And in 1331 it was in this castle that Queen Isabella was incarcerated, imprisoned. She was the wife of the ill-fated King Edward II, who was brutally, horrendously murdered in Berkeley Castle. She was imprisoned here by her son, King Edward III, for sanctioning the murder of his father. She lived here in reasonable comfort, visited by her son, the King, and her grandson, the Black Prince. But as she grew older, she became insane. And they say that her ghost still wanders the ramparts. Many, many people, visitors and guides, have seen this tormented figure of a woman running around the area of these walls, along this corridor, shrieking and screaming. And they say that the sound of her shrieks sounds just like an old, demented witch. It's especially bad, of course, on dark, windy nights, when the wind howls around these corridors and her shrieks can be heard even louder. It's day 2 of the Scottish ghost tour. It's been a long way. We're near Stonehaven. The wind's howling. I'm getting more tired and more dishevelled, but we've just come across what I would say is the epitome of a Scottish castle, perched on an outcrop in the sea, not far from the Grampians. This, well, I've never seen a castle like it, and of course I've been down and had a word with the custodian, and guess what? It's haunted. There's various ghosts here. Yet again, Mary Queen of Scots stayed here. So did her son, King James VI of Scotland and First of England. No reports of Mary haunting it, strangely enough. In 1685 there were in excess of 150 prisoners of conscience locked away in this castle in a dirty, dark dungeon known even to this day as the Whig's Vault. Quite a few of those prisoners died, and I'm told that there's a rather nasty presence in the dungeons. The custodians don't like going down there on their own. And yet another green lady that's been seen, a green haze or mist, seen in various parts of the castle and in the tower. A ghostly dog, a large sort of deerhound, young dog, rather thin, seen by the custodian, Mr. McGregor. He went to tell some people to keep their dog under control, and the dog just vanished. He's seen it on 2 or 3 occasions. A German tourist came to complain to him about the large dog that was wandering round and then suddenly disappeared. A young girl of about 13 years of age, dressed in sackcloth, has been seen wandering around. People, visitors, have come up to the custodians to tell them that there's a little girl wandering aimlessly about. Seemed as if she was looking for her parents. But then, like so many of these ghosts, she just disappeared. That's exactly what I'm going to do now. It's getting very late. The light seems to be going, and this is not the sort of place that I'd like to linger around. Certainly not in the dark. I'm at Ruthin. Behind me, the Victorian luxury Ruthin Castle Hotel. All around me, the medieval remains of Ruthin Castle. You can wander these grounds and these remains while you're staying at the castle. It's got murder, it's got executions, sieges, and a fantastic ghost, a grey lady. So come and join me as I wander these incredible grounds looking for their ghost. I've just been exploring, wandering around. I'm looking for the dungeons, which I know for a fact are under here. I've just gone up there, walked back down, and walked across here. And as I got to here, without the word of a lie, there was an echo of footsteps behind me. I'm still spooked. Every footstep I made, I could hear a footstep behind mine. Turned round to look, nothing, obviously. No footsteps, no imprints in the leaves or anything, but I really, really did hear something. And I don't like it, but I mean, it's broad daylight, the sun's shining, it's the end of June. You really don't expect ghostly goings on at this time of the day. But something really followed me down here, and that's not done me any good, because I'm now going down into the dungeons. And this dark hole, dating back probably to 1282, God knows how many people have been incarcerated down here. I'm going down on my own, after having something happen to me just there in the daylight. God knows what's going to happen in the dark. And of course, like so many castles, that this goes back, the original foundations laid about 1271 by King Edward I. And castles were built, of course, for fighting. Many sieges laid to this castle. In 1400, it was besieged by Owen Glendower. He laid siege to this castle, but it withheld the siege, but he burnt Ruthin to the ground. And how many people must have died around here, I don't know. In 1646 it was again laid siege to, captured by Cromwell's soldiers and pulled down. This is the place where prisoners would be held. This is where people would be tortured. And it has a horrid feel about it. A cold, damp, very dark feel. There's something through here. There's an incredible archway through here leading to, I don't know where. Oh, there's a gap here. It continues, stops here, and yeah, there's a staircase leading to who knows where. Been stoned up for many, many years, and even up here, yeah, there's a little window, a little arrow slit pointing back through there. They tell me that there's also an area completely stoned off where people were actually bricked up and left to die. Through here somewhere. Can't tell whether it's hollow, but there is a hole. Where that goes, I wonder if the light of the camera could point through and see how far it goes. Oh my goodness me, it goes right through. The walls are very thick. But legend has it that anyone that puts their hand in there can shake hand, not with the devil, but with the spirits that still linger in here. Dare I do it? Here goes. Oh, this is not nice. Oh God, can you imagine this if something grabs my hand now? No, it's coming out. I don't like that. No, nobody did. But what a tunnel. What a fantastic dungeon. Of course, the chances of ghosts being down here are immense because we're surrounded by stone. And I'm a great believer that stone holds recordings of a violent, tragic and premature death. Just listen to it echoing down here. And I believe that on certain times, perhaps when the atmosphere is similar to when the death took place, or perhaps it's the anniversary of that death, the recording is released from the stonework. Certain people see it again. But I don't think it's a ghost. I think it's a recording. Exactly the same as pressing the replay button of your video player. You see that event again. And I believe that happens down here. But it's very dark, very dank, rather spooky down here. Nothing's happened to me, thank goodness. I can see the light out there. All spirits, good and evil, crave the light. That's where I'm going, to the light. Out into the daylight, it's much better. I've got to find a grave, a lady's walk, and a drowning pit. So I'm going back up to see if I can find them. I'm in search of the grave of the Grey Lady. It's not that often you can actually find the grave of a ghost. I believe I have. This has all the right ingredients. Stonework, archways, and ivy everywhere. And through here, I am told, is the grave. Just a pile of stones now, where she rests. Well, she doesn't rest. That's why we're here. She still wanders. She is believed to be the wife of the second in command of the garrison here at the castle. Her husband was having an affair with a peasant woman. So his wife decided she would not be humiliated anymore. She attacked the woman with an axe. She beheaded her. The wife was brought to justice, brought back to the castle and tried, and executed for murder, and buried here in unconsecrated ground. And I believe that's why she still haunts this castle. The fact that she can't rest because of not being in consecrated ground. Now, it's broad daylight, it's sunny. Whether we can actually get a reading with this meter, I don't know. This is an EMF meter, which picks up electromagnetic fields or breaks in electromagnetic fields. And of course, energy is everywhere. You cannot destroy energy. That's why I believe ghosts still haunt. But we'll switch it on and see if she happens to be around this morning. I would say it's highly unlikely. Ghosts don't usually appear to an audience. But we'll see. Nobody knows. If we get any sounds or any change, there is a possibility that she could be here. Well, right now I don't know whether this would be a head or a feet, but we're certainly getting a reading. And I don't know. Now look, there's no electricity. There's nothing. There's no cables. There's no light switches. There's no overhead cables here. There's no reason whatsoever for me to get a reading here on this spot, other than the fact that she could be around. Who knows? I have a horrible feeling she's waiting for me. There's just been a tremendous commotion. There's peacocks all over the place. And all of a sudden, the meter, again, is picking something up here, as if there is someone actually, oh God, is actually standing here. And again, there's of course there's nothing. We're talking of a medieval castle. There's no electricity around here, but I am getting a very good reading here, as if there's something standing by this gateway. I think she's going to be with me for the rest of the morning. I don't like this. Oh God. Yeah, it's absolutely a really good reading. I mean, it's just the camera can just pick up. I don't believe this. Now look, she's gone. She's gone. I mean, nobody will ever know. Nobody will know that because the camera, I don't think, picked up the reading here on this EMF meter. But as the camera came to me, no, she's back. And she goes. As soon as the camera comes close, there's nothing. I think we've got a camera shy ghost. And this is the area where the Grey Lady walks. Even to this day, this is still known as the Lady's Walk. I wonder why there are so many stories of Grey Ladies. I believe it's what most people see. I've seen a ghost, and funnily enough, the thing that I say about it was that it was distinctly grey. It was a grey haze. I couldn't tell whether mine was actually male or female, but it was grey, so perhaps that's why. I've still got the EMF meter with me. As I entered the Lady's Walk, it was still active, but strangely enough, the one place where you'd expect to find her, she actually doesn't seem to be here. I'm quite pleased about that, because I thought she'd attached herself to me and that she may be following us round, but she seems to have gone. This is the most incredible place, one of the best places I think I've been to. It's the Ruthin Castle Hotel now, and you've got all the ingredients here for a fantastic haunted weekend. You've got an incredible medieval castle that you can wander the grounds at night. You've got a fantastic ghost story. So what better to do after dinner, as it's getting dusk, than wandering outside and wandering these grounds alone, if you dare. I'm at Tintagel, climbing the steps to the top. The way I feel at the moment, we may well be creating a new ghost in Cornwall. Yes, if my heart keeps going or not, I don't know. I'm now right at the top, this magnificent place. We had to do Tintagel if we're doing Cornish ghosts. This is the legendary birthplace of King Arthur. He was reputedly conceived here and born here. People say that they still see the ghost of that legendary king wandering around this place. It has a strange, eerie feel about it. It's a frightening place. It's full of myths and legends, as is the whole of Cornwall. But unfortunately, this castle, built of stone, or even slate as it looks, was built many hundred years after King Arthur had died. Built for Richard, Duke of Cornwall. No one knows why he built such an incredible castle on such a difficult place to build as here. Perhaps he built it because also he knew the legend of his predecessor, King Arthur. I'm standing on the mound. This is the highest point at Warwick. This was the first part to be fortified in 1068. It was originally a wooden stockade, but by 1260 this had become a massive stone castle keep. And through these gates here, down below, is the most magnificent medieval castle in the whole of England. And the view from under here is absolutely breathtaking. There are, of course, many stories of ghosts to do with Warwick Castle. One of the most famous is that of a black dog. It's supposedly the changed form of a farm girl called Nell Bloxham. For some reason, the Earl would not allow her to sell produce and milk to the castle, and she died in poverty in her cottage beneath the walls of this castle. The number of spirits of animals that are seen, the number of black dogs, white dogs, small and large dogs, all with red staring eyes, means that animals, just like humans, have managed to avoid the process of death. But probably one of the most famous haunted sites here at Warwick, down here on the right hand side, is the Ghost Tower. Let's go down and have a look. And of course behind me stands the famous Ghost Tower of Warwick Castle. But let's go inside and have a look and see what terrors it holds. What stories can be told from within. As I climb the steps, a gentleman called Sir Fulk Grenville was murdered by his manservant in London. He was Lord Chancellor of England, and for some strange reason, no one knows why, but they say that his ghost still haunts this tower. And I presume this is the gentleman, Sir Fulk Grenville. They say that he didn't die straight away after being stabbed by his manservant, but they say that the doctor botched the job of repairing his wounds so much that 20 odd days later he died in terrible agony.
Is haunted. If you dare learn the murderous history of this tower, then listen to the ghosts that walk it.
I'm at Carrickfergus Castle in County Antrim. A haunted castle, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But the history of this place is amazing. This is actually the oldest castle in Ireland. It was built at the time of Henry II. It's got one ghost for definite, but an associated story, I'm told, with a building across the road. Straight across in front of me is, I can just see it, a place called Dobbin's Hotel. And apparently the ghost stories tend to interact. So I'm going inside to see if I can find anybody that can tell me some more. So come inside with me and let's have a look. Right, well, I'm now inside Carrickfergus Castle, or is it known as Carrick Castle?
Locally Carrick, but Carrickfergus.
Right, and Davey, you are a tour guide here at the castle.
Mm-hmm.
You're one of those, a bit like me, you'd like to make history interesting and fun.
Yes.
So you take a lot of kids around here, of course, as well.
We do Year 8 secondary school Norman tour.
Right.
Bit of fun for them.
Do you tell them the ghost stories?
We always tell them.
I thought you might do, yeah. So we're inside, we've come actually to see the well, and of course to hear the story. But I mean, this is what the castle looked like. Still looks like, I suppose, to a certain extent.
This was the first bit that was built about 1178. John de Courcy. It was built for defensive purposes here.
And tell me, this is true, isn't it? This is the oldest castle in Ireland?
Yep.
I thought so. That's a pretty good claim to fame.
It is.
But anyway, ghosts. That's what we're here for.
Well, I've only got one for you.
Okay, he'll do. He'll do.
Enough. Well, it's Button Cap. He's called Button Cap. He was a drummer boy in the 17th century when the place was garrisoned here.
Right.
And behind me is where he met his fate, because here we have one of the reasons the castle was built here is an internal well. As you said, you can't poison the well if it's in the castle.
No, exactly. And of course you can't use it to get into the castle and up.
Yeah.
Is that safe?
It's safe, yes. It's safe now. It wasn't safe then. Yeah.
Right. So something happened to him down here, we think.
Well, he fell approximately 50 foot into about 10 foot of water.
Yeah.
He couldn't swim.
No.
And that was the end of Button Cap.
And that's it. He drowned in there. And
that was his mortal end, at any rate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He still haunts the place, of course.
Well, he's been seen by a few people. Because he was a drummer boy in the army, he was feisty sort of character. And legend has it that the battlements out there that you've seen,
yes,
that's the 17th century guns, when those were in use, he'd charge up and down behind the guns, giving encouragement.
Of course, drumming and shouting and generally
hurrah lads, give them a hard time.
Right, yeah.
We can possibly meet a friend of mine who works here as well in a little bit, who's actually, when he was 12, saw the ghost, so he can tell you a bit more.
We have an eyewitness.
We have an eyewitness.
Oh boy. Yeah. Right. Now, why do they think he haunts the battlements? Is there a reason? Was he hit by
no, it's just that
fire?
He was just this version of the story. There's probably other versions, but in this one he was just he didn't want to leave. He wanted to keep on fighting. And when the place, as you know, was invaded by the French,
yes, indeed,
etc. So anytime there was gun action, Button Cap was there, giving a voice and encouragement.
Gotcha. And that's why he's still around. He still haunts the place, probably because he got so enthusiastic, loved the place so much that he tends to linger.
Well, we haven't let the guns off so much in the last few years, so maybe if we could let the cannons off a bit, we might bring him back.
Hey, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Now, there's another story I have. I don't know how true it is. He was implicated in a liaison or an affair that went on here between the garrison commander and a young lady called Maud at the local hotel across the road.
Dobbin's Inn, it's called.
Dobbin's, that's right.
Very old place.
And he is reputed to have been implicated in it, in fact used as a scapegoat instead of the commanding officer, and hanged, but of course was innocent.
That's right.
And they say that's why his tormented soul still wanders around the place, because he was actually hanged for something, of course, that he didn't do. Yeah. So we've got various
and of course you have
stories.
You have the other ghost, Maud, the putative girlfriend,
which of course is at the hotel.
Yes.
Which I need to go over and have a look and see if we can find her.
I would say they could tell you some stories about moving things in the kitchen and
oh wow,
stuff like
we need
that.
to do that next. But can we go and find your associate?
Jimmy, yeah.
Jimmy, and
he'll tell you
have his
what he
ghost
knows
story.
about it.
Fantastic, let's go and have a look. Now, Jimmy, you are my witness, yeah? You've actually seen the ghost of the drummer boy.
I've seen the ghost, yes.
Here.
Right outside the castle wall here, just outside this spot here.
Right.
Sitting up on the castle wall.
And when was that?
1942.
Well, you must have been a young lad.
I was 12 years, between 11 and 12 years of age.
And what were you doing?
We were gathering driftwood. My friend and I, we were gathering driftwood. We seen a large piece of driftwood. We went to pick it up. We both looked up and seen the image at the same time. We dropped the driftwood and ran.
I should think you did.
We ran, we ran right across the seaweed and all. We didn't stop.
So you didn't see him up here?
No, outside the castle wall.
What, down? Actually down on the outside?
Down on the outside.
I'm not going to stick my head over there. Okay.
Yes.
On the out. So he was actually elevated
or suspended. It's in suspension.
So there was nothing else, no one else there? It
no.
wasn't like someone being up here and
No.
you just happened to see someone go by?
It was a dark, frosty night during the winter of 1942, and there was no one else about.
And he was in a sort of uniform?
He was like in a dark uniform with a dark hat on.
That is amazing. So he does exist?
Well, I know he exists.
Well, that's all that
I don't think
matters.
he exists. I know he exists.
Jimmy, that is amazing. That's wonderful. That's all I needed. Thank you very much indeed.
My
Nice to
pleasure.
have met you. Thank you. In the 12th century, William de Newborough, a Yorkshire priest, wrote a tale of the wicked Lord of Alnwick. This man died, was buried, and then his body or his soul started to fly around the town of Alnwick. His foul smell, they say, spread the Great Plague around here and many people died. He was reported as being a vampire. The situation became so serious that many years later his body was exhumed. The coffin lid was removed and his body was said to be still smelling foul and was greatly swollen. Someone struck the body with a spade, and although he'd been dead for many years, he started to bleed. There is another story that he, for many years, walked around the town, attacking the townsfolk. But luckily, he hasn't been reported for many, many years. Just at the back of me here, the two slits in the wall, directly below the kitchens. And it was just down there, in the tunnels, where the Grey Lady has been seen on many occasions. I'm walking along underneath Alnwick Castle through a tunnel that's not that old actually. Very dark, quite spooky, very cold. It's the story of a Grey Lady, a young girl in Victorian times, a maid, teenager. She fell down the chute. The kitchens are above us, and she fell down this very chute here where I'm standing. And unfortunately, the dumb waiter, the lift that conveyed the food up and down in this tunnel, came down after her and crushed her to death on this very spot where I'm standing now. And they tell me that on frequent occasions, people walking along that tunnel have seen the Grey Lady, the ghost of that poor, unfortunate girl that was crushed to death just here, over 120 years ago. I'm now entering the dungeon at Alnwick Castle. During the English Civil War, there were over 6,000 Scottish prisoners imprisoned, obviously not here in this room, but at the castle. 3,000 of them didn't make it out, died here and are buried somewhere around here. In here, through this grille, is the pit, or the oubliette as it was called. And many of those poor unfortunate prisoners were thrown down there into the pit. And they're so that even to this day, people can still hear the pathetic moans and groans of those poor dying Scots. And Ian, we've arrived very much so at Penhallow Castle. Ron here, of course, who I met last time I was here, and now it's your job, gentlemen. No point in me saying anything, although I know a lot of the stories because I've been here.
Of course,
it's far better if you would take me on a whistle-stop tour of, well, come on, this is just atmosphere, isn't it? Yeah. Tell me about the history, quickly, about what happened here. And
Well, there's an immense amount of it, but basically the tower itself was built in about 1500. There's all kinds of history, murder, intrigue, terror, all kinds of things have happened in this castle. It is by many claimed to be the most haunted location in the country, let alone Cornwall. Let's go in and find out.
That's what we want. Great stuff. Now, it was, of course, a lot bigger, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, because it was all the way around out the back there.
Yeah, and it was ruined, demolished, and...
Yeah, it's been a ruin. I mean, the wall, you can just see the bit of the wall left there.
Yeah.
You used to go along the top over there,
Yeah.
down past those trees, and just down past where the beehive is.
Yeah. So it was a big place?
Yeah.
Yep. In this way?
Yep, through the door there.
Is there anybody in? Lead on, Macduff. You know the way better than I do. Fantastic spiral stair. I mean, this is obviously one of the towers, I presume, of the old castle.
Well, it was the only tower.
Really? And my goodness me, into, if I remember rightly from the most haunted days, this is the solar room.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just solar.
Right.
It was the sitting room.
Yeah.
And that over there, the garderobe where they used to keep the commodes.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Ghosts?
Well, there's a not very nice presence hangs around that corner.
Oh yeah.
There's not a very nice presence by this clock, between the window and the clock. That's a woman. That's a male.
Yeah.
It's over there where it's just here. And there was a girl here. And you literally saw a hair being lifted over her head and thrown back.
Right.
And the one there had a breast squeezed.
Oh boy.
And she screamed. You never heard her scream like it when Ian came flying in. Thought there'd been an accident.
I was outside a good 50 yards away and I heard this scream. Thought, what the hell's going on? Came running in and then I found out what had happened.
They were with you.
no one anywhere near her. You know, I mean, the rest of the group, I think I had 8 that night. But the rest of them were around. And she was there.
My gosh.
Now, fortnight ago, was it fortnight, 3 weeks? 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, about 3 weeks, yeah.
About 3 weeks ago, we had another woman in here. Now, I've been talking to her upstairs.
Yes.
Before she came here, and she had a clean blue, light blue anorak on. And she came running up like the clappers. And on the front of it, you could see where there was a wrist and a very large hand, bigger than mine. And also one on her belly. And but the funny thing is, on the end of those fingers, it was just as though someone had dipped the hands in flour and gone like that.
There were marks on her.
Yeah. And on the end of 3 of the fingers, they were like claws. So I think that what's happened is that she'd had a lower entity at her, one of the lower entities that get in occasionally.
Oh my goodness me.
And
she didn't like that,
She
Albert.
was not amused.
My God. And tell me that
The thing is, she wants to come back to see, to see.
people do come back for more, you know.
Yeah.
What about the lady that was fondled? Did she
She was
continue?
fun. No, the thing is, her sister was here at the same time, and she took a photograph.
Yeah.
And she's got, is it two, isn't it? 2 big orbs on the side of
Oh, really?
side. And then upstairs, she had her vagina pressed while she was sitting down on a box up there. And her sister took a photograph then as she more or less said, ooh.
Yeah.
And her sister took a photograph then, and there's a great big orb.
Again, so
Again.
The first manifestations, if you like, of a spirit or something that
The
possibly...
orbs, an orb is the remnants of human life.
Yeah.
You can get a knob, you know, that people say, oh, it's dust or it's this,
Oh, I know.
it's that.
Yeah, but not
But
big.
if you have a look at an actual spirit orb, then you'll find it's got a nucleus,
Yes.
and all the way around it's got a particular cellular structure makeup,
Yeah.
and then it's got varied colours depending on what vibration it is. For instance, further up in the grounds, in the healing woman's bothy, where we always get the same sort of orb, it's a beautiful green going to turquoise, which is a very healing colour.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, this is not the only haunted room, is it?
No.
Shall we carry on up to the next
Yeah, let's go up to the
floor?
bedroom.
Okay.
Why not?
After you, Ron.
Okie dokie.
Now, this, gentlemen, is the room where I was standing when we were doing some filming, and we were talking about someone that choked.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, where were you standing?
I was standing over here at the back trying to keep out of the way,
Yeah,
and as
yeah.
Derek Akora mentioned the word choking, I kid you not, I was standing and I started to well up, and I was going, I don't want to cough, I don't want to do anything, and I had to actually run out, basically because I didn't want to spoil what they were filming.
Yeah.
And as I went down the stairs, I was reaching and choking and coughing, and I've never experienced anything quite like it. In fact, they stopped filming, they came down to me. It was amazing.
It's not the first time that sort of thing's happened.
We
in this
had
room. We've had
four women and a man, didn't we?
Yeah.
On Thursday.
Last
but that
Saturday.
choking was that. You were doing the vigil, weren't you? And where she had a vagina interfered with on that chest over there.
There was a man suddenly came around out the corner and felt exactly as if he was being strangled. There was like a feeling
Yes.
of choking around the throat.
Yeah.
Very, very similar to what you said you experienced as well.
In here.
And that particular corner is also a place where we've had people pushed, pinched, touched in different ways. We've heard knocking coming from there. There was even another film crew came here and captured on infrared camera a strange image on the screen, just like a figure in blues and cold. The same place. There is
That
certainly
was the
believed to be-
thermal imaging, wasn't it?
And again, does anybody know who haunts this room, or what?
Well, there's, in this room, I'll tell you what you've got now. Hang on a minute. Let's just get myself together. Eight-year-old girl, the nurse, 13-year-old girl, two women on the bed, 4-year-old boy is behind there. There's Hannah by that valve.
Oh my God! You.
Woman on the wall. There's a man lying down there. I'll show you that man.
Oh, come on! Now look, these are your dowsing rods, yes? And with these, you can actually pick up energy, an entity.
Yeah. He measured bleeding foot, put me on his head.
Look at him!
There's his head. Alright, take me on his body. That'll be his hips.
Oh, I don't believe this.
On the top of his leg. His knee.
Now, I can see you're not doing that. I mean,
Bottom of his leg. His ankle. No.
Ron.
He was stabbed and he was strangled.
When we started, was that this is one of the most haunted places, certainly in Cornwall, and the way we're going with the number of ghosts and everything else, we're saying possibly in the whole country. I've never experienced anything like this.
No, there's not many places that have.
There's a
many.
difference between a ghost and a presence.
Oh yes, I realise that. Yeah.
Well, I suppose most people like to think of them as ghosts, don't they?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. But I tell you what, I mean, this is the first time I've seen anything quite like that, and it's incredible. Ron, it's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much indeed. It's fantastic. And we're probably now in the most haunted place in the Midlands. Dudley Castle and Zoo behind me here. In 1750, the castle mysteriously burnt down. It burned for 3 days, and the molten lead dripping from the roof made it look as if the whole hill was on fire. And of course, this place has got more than its fair share of ghosts. And with me this morning is Adrian Durkin, who is the keeper of Dudley Castle and Zoo. And Adrian, you actually take ghost walks, amongst other things,
Yes.
around the castle.
Yes, indeed we do. We have a lot of people who come to visit our ghosts, and they don't just occur in the castle. I mean, obviously the castle is the oldest landmark around here,
Yep.
so that's where you'd expect the ghosts to be. But down here we've actually got one of the concrete buildings of the zoo, for which the zoo is actually quite famous.
Yes.
They're built by Bertolt Lubetkin, charming name,
Wonderful.
in 1930 to 1937.
Really?
And rumour had it that a couple wearing 1930s clothes could be seen walking round the top parapets of the enclosure there. Perhaps some poor couple who were lost in love, but
Yep.
unfortunately the path of love did not run smoothly for them, and what they failed to achieve in life they have now managed in death, or whatever. It must be said that was a story that I tended to take with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
Until on one of the ghost watches that we did in cooperation with Parasearch, the Midland Psychical Research Group, one of our watchers was actually coming up here and saw a strange cloud, a completely unnatural cloud, sort of drifting across the top of the enclosure. So now we tend to take that particular story just a little bit more seriously, and it has become sort of part of the pantheon of ghost stories that we do tell around the site. So they're not all old stories. Some of them go back a mere 50 or 60 years.
Oh yeah, see, everyone thinks that all ghosts have to be in medieval costumes, and
That's it,
but
yeah.
it's not the case.
No.
But of course, you don't think that the cloud is pretty high here. Well, of course, it couldn't be a low cumulonimbus or something. That no.
Anything's possible, but what was noticeable about this was it was a very small cloud,
Yeah.
and it was, according to our informant, behaving unnaturally. I'm not entirely certain what natural cloud is, but clearly they felt this was unnatural.
Yeah.
It was sort of drifting.
So it's certainly a supernatural experience.
Well, it was for the person who watched it, yes, indeed. He certainly counts it amongst one of the few that he's
Yeah,
encountered.
that's fine. And of course, this isn't the only one, is it?
Oh,
There's-
no,
I presume.
I think actually, we're sort of nearly starting on a high point, because from now on, I'm afraid everything goes downhill.
Oh, right.
Literally rather than figuratively, we hope.
Right.
If you'd like to come.
I'd
this
love
way.
to. When I walked here, saw this gatehouse, I thought, there's got to be something ghostly to do with this, and I presume I'm right, am I?
Indeed,
Yeah.
yes. Although, of course, in historical times, the topography wasn't quite like this, because all this area has been severely damaged by limestone mining. It went right up to the gateway of the castle. So originally, the slope would have been more gentle.
Really?
It would have been possible to ride or take a carriage up to that gateway. I think you'd have a bit of difficulty today.
Just a little.
But the story goes that it's quite well documented. During the English Civil War, the castle was besieged for the second time in 1646.
Yes.
Sir William Brereton's forces were over there. He was MP for Cheshire.
Parliamentarians,
And
I presume.
inside, absolutely.
Yep.
And inside was Colonel Leveson with his garrison of about 400 royalists.
Yep.
Anyway, Sir William had problems. He had almost no artillery train, so he wasn't going to smash down the castle.
Yes.
His soldiers hadn't been paid for about 6 weeks,
Wonderful.
and so they were in no mood to sort of storm the castle. And really, the longer he sat outside the castle, the less money they were going to have, and the worse position he was going to be in. So he really needed to get rid of the castle quickly, but at the same time, he didn't have the resources to do this.
Yep.
So he was going to try and talk them out. And so he sent a message up to the castle. And that message would probably have been carried by a drummer. They weren't drummer boys, because of 17th century.
Correct.
drummers
Very
about
large
that sort of
things
size.
indeed, yes.
So it would be a young man.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was sort of trained to do a bit of furtive snooping around when he got in there. Anyway, now you would have been able to recognise him even if he hadn't had his drum, because drummers were much better dressed. They
Correct.
were actually, their clothes were paid for by their officers.
Yep.
And so they were a bit of class. So this young lad is alleged to have walked up to the castle, and when he got to here or whatever, smack, a single shot rang out and he fell dead.
Right.
And it was actually a double crime. Firstly, it was a crime against the rules of war, which
Oh,
stated
yeah.
specifically that musicians, drummers, were non-combatant.
Correct,
I mean,
yes, yeah.
if they got shot in the heat of battle, that was too
Different,
bad.
yeah.
Serves them right to being there. But you didn't go out of your way to kill them.
Correct,
Not
yep.
least because your enemy couldn't sound the retreat if you potted off all his drummers. So it was actually quite good to keep them alive. So they were non-competent. And really, it was also a crime against the rules of fate, because a 17th century musket just is not that accurate. So to pick off somebody down here
Was
with
pretty good.
With pretty good going.
I mean, you
yes.
wouldn't actually hit a barn door at 30 yards, would you?
Absolutely no.
So
no.
that was something.
So anyway, it is rumoured that this lad was killed
Yes,
here.
yeah.
Now, the story actually goes that he haunts the building over there.
This white
That's
building
right,
here?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, right.
Now, several manifestations and quite a number recently, strangely enough. What we actually get, there was one occasion when one of the people here was working late in the evening, and he suddenly became aware that somebody had come into the building. Now, he wasn't expecting this, he was locked in, and so he imagined it was the director or something coming back late.
Usual story, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. Reality.
Walked around the building and found nobody at all. He was completely on his own. And so he actually sort of did a double take and then said, no, I can't be imagining it, and went back to his work somewhat concerned.
Yes.
And he was doing the same thing a few nights later, and the same thing happened again, and this time he was so filled with terror that he actually ran out of the building. And to get out of the building, he had to come through an intermediate door which actually slid to open.
Yes.
And in his panic, he tried to open it in the conventional way and ripped the door handle clean off. And I think this story is made even more frightening when you realise that this young chap was an accountant. And they're not noted for their imagination, well, except perhaps the creative ones. So
oh boy.
That's one story. But recently we've actually had a couple of sightings and some strange occurrences. One in the cash office where it suddenly went incredibly cold, and an automatic calculating machine on the other side of the room started calculating when there was nobody anywhere near it.
Wow.
And then down in the cellar, one of our members of staff actually went into the gents, which is down in the cellar, and as he went past the cubicle, saw out the corner of his eye that there was somebody in there, so he just walked up and sort of washed his hands or whatever, as you do. And the person in there was wearing the usual dark clothes, which actually on this site characterised the maintenance department. And so when he came back, the cubicle was free, he used it, went upstairs. Somebody said, "Have you seen so-and-so, the head of maintenance?" And the chap replied, "Oh, well, I saw him downstairs a minute ago." And somebody else said, No, he's not been in the building this morning." And in fact, there was no
one else in the building.
No way to account for this figure that was seen in the loo. So you've got to admire the ghost. I mean, he waited 400 years to use that cubicle,
the loo.
so there you go.
That's amazing.
But that is one of the more recent stories. I mean, we're talking about November 2001.
Oh, really?
That particular
Very
story.
recent. When you think it's only January 2002
that's right.
now.
We are talking about specifically things that are still happening.
Yeah.
Most of the sites around here are, I think, what you might
Active.
call active. Yes,
That's
indeed.
wonderful.
So, shall we carry on up?
Shall we do that? Yes, indeed. We've now arrived actually at the castle. Now, obviously, most of the stories must come from this actual site, I would imagine.
Yes, indeed. But strange enough, some of them, I'm sure, like many ghost stories you've encountered, are ghosts that don't have stories.
Oh, yeah?
So we have an interesting problem here, whereby we actually had a group of people who were on a sponsored ghost watch around the castle on Halloween, about 5 or 6 years ago, something like that, raising money for hospitals. And they were actually in another part of the site, which is also haunted.
Yes.
Perhaps we'll have time to visit that later.
Right.
But around about 11 o'clock, when nothing had happened, and then it hadn't happened some more, and then nothing happened again, and then after that nothing happened, they began to get a bit bored.
I'm sure.
So a percentage of the group, I think sort of about 5 out of 7 of them, decided to go for a walk. And they came up to here, where we are now, and they looked up at the tower, and walking along the parapet at the top there, they seemed to see a figure. And quite recognisable as a figure, not much detail. Bear in mind we're 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
Now you might think it would be dark, but in fact all the light coming up from Dudley reflects back. So particularly if you have a cloudy night, it's actually quite bright up here. So although you can't see in detail, you can always see, there's enough light
it's not
to get
pitch
some
black.
vision. And so they saw this figure walk, and they watched it for quite a while. Being intrepid, brave explorers,
Off they
they
went.
didn't have the nerve to go up there and find out what was going on. Instead, they went back to their associates, and they told their associates what they'd seen, and needless to say, the other two didn't believe a word
Of course
it.
not.
You're winding us up. So about 1 o'clock in the morning, they all decided to come up here. One of the group was, I'm told, a slightly older lady, and she actually had her car with her, so they put some lights into the boot, and she drove up here, and the rest of them walked. And when the other 6 got up here, there she was standing by her car. I can see it, she's saying. And they all looked up, and they all saw this figure. Now, if the possibility is that it was somebody having them on,
Which, of course,
somebody
everyone
had been walking up and down there
for a long time.
2 hours, in a October, November night.
No, I wouldn't.
So that doesn't seem very likely, and
No.
they all saw it. They did try the lights, but the lights were no real use because that sort of range, you weren't getting any great illumination. In fact, they did tend to think that they got a better view of it when they weren't trying to use lights, really. In the light,
That's
there just didn't
amazing.
seem to be anything there. So there you go.
But that is amazing, because, I mean, as I say, on frequent occasions, ghosts don't normally appear to audiences.
Well, there's a codicil to this, which is also quite interesting, because they were all duly amazed, went back and decided, sort of 4 o'clock in the morning, to come up again.
Yeah.
And when they came up again, some of them reckoned they could still see it, but some of them could see
Couldn't.
nothing at all. And the interesting follow-up to this is that one of the people on that tour was actually a reporter, and she actually went to say for the newspaper that they had seen a ghost, and their editor wouldn't actually let them print it.
Oh,
So apparently you
amazing.
can say anything you like about the Queen, the Prince of Wales, the Prime Minister. Start admitting you've seen a ghost and you lose
No
all
way.
credibility.
What a shame.
So she wasn't. So she had to say some of the members of the group believed they had seen, and so that was it. The end of the story. We've never
That's
had a
amazing.
repeat sighting of that.
Really?
I mean, on the ghost tours that we run around Dudley in various years, we'll normally bring up 2 groups a week.
Stand them
We've
here, tell them the story.
Tell them the story, and they've never seen anything.
And no one
that,
else has ever stood at this point and looked up
that's
there
right,
and seen it.
and seen anything. No, absolutely nothing.
Nice one, that is.
So there you go. Very strange story.